Her screams pierced through the summer air like a siren, echoing across the backyard as I stood frozen, pool net in hand. Karen's arms flailed wildly in the deep end of my pool, her face contorted in panic. Just seconds earlier, she had burst through my back gate uninvited, yelling something about community codes and how my new deck umbrella was an eyesore. Now she was sputtering, gasping, and slipping under the water she had no business being near in the first place. The water swallowed her once, then again. I shouted for my wife. My heart slammed against my ribs. I dropped the net, dove in fully clothed, and yanked her up just before she went under again. She coughed, spit water everywhere, and clutched my arm like a lifeline. The woman who just threatened to report me to the HOA was now clinging to me for dear life. I pulled her out, dropped to my knees beside her, and tried to catch my breath. She coughed and wheezed beside me. I reached for my phone to call 911, then she slapped it out of my hand. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You did this to me, and you'll pay for it." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "I'm going to sue you," she hissed, eyes wide with fury. "You set me up." And that was the moment I realized this story wasn't over. It was just beginning. 2 months earlier, we moved into what was supposed to be our peaceful forever home in a tidy little neighborhood on the edge of Raleigh, North Carolina. My wife Amanda and I had saved for 6 years, working double shifts and skipping vacations, to finally buy our dream place. 3 bedrooms, a backyard big enough for summer cookouts, and best of all, a pool. We'd only just gotten settled when the letters started. Handwritten, no postage, always folded perfectly into our mailbox. At first, I thought it was just some helpful neighbor pointing things out. The first note read, "Trash cans are to be brought in the same day. Kindly comply." Okay, fair enough. Maybe I forgot. The second note came a day after Amanda strung up a string of soft fairy lights along the fence. "Lighting visible from the road must be white only. HOA regulations." The third one just said, "Your lawn is 2.5 inches. HOA code requires 2. I raised an eyebrow at that one. Amanda laughed, thinking someone was joking. But the next day, we received an actual letter, this time from the HOA board, demanding we address repeated infractions or face a fine. It didn't take long for the source to reveal herself. One morning, while I was hosing off the patio, I heard her voice. Sharp, nasal, filled with that fake politeness that makes your skin crawl. "Good morning, I see you're new here." I turned to see a woman in her late 50s standing just beyond our fence. She wore a stiff pink blouse tucked into beige slacks and held a clipboard like a sword. "I'm Karen, Vice President of the HOA. Welcome to our community." I gave a nod and a half smile. "Thanks." "Just keeping things running smoothly," she said, tapping her clipboard. "We like order here." I didn't respond, just went back to hosing. But that was the day I knew. Karen wasn't just a neighbor, she was a problem. She showed up 3 more times that week, once to tell Amanda her wind chimes were audible past sunset, and once to measure our mailbox post with a tape measure. The last time, she walked right into our backyard, no knock, no call, nothing, and said the color of our patio chairs clashed with the community color scheme. That time I told her to leave. She smiled like I'd just given her a reason to live. "You'll regret that," she said softly. I didn't think she meant it literally. Amanda and I tried to keep to ourselves. We replaced the chairs, took down the lights, even trimmed the grass to HOA perfect standards. But every week, she found something. Then came the pool issue. See, we'd paid a contractor to fix a leak in the foundation and in doing so, added a small privacy fence with a retractable shade canopy over the pool area. Nothing fancy. Just something for Amanda, who has lupus, to sit under without the sun aggravating her condition. Apparently, this was Karen's final straw. The first warning came via email, then the certified letter. Then, last Friday, I caught her pacing the back alley beside our home, snapping photos through the fence slats. I told her to stop. She just smiled and walked away. That Saturday was our first real family pool day. My cousin Ryan and his kids came over. Music was playing low, burgers were sizzling, and everyone was relaxed. I'd just gone inside to grab drinks when I heard the shouting. Karen had stormed into the yard, literally opened the back gate, and was barking at my cousin about unauthorized gatherings. Ryan tried to keep it cool, but when Karen stepped dangerously close to his 6-year-old son, who was floating in the shallow end, Amanda intervened. "You need to leave," she said firmly. "Now." "I'm within my rights to inspect HOA violations," Karen shouted. "You are trespassing," Amanda replied, reaching for her phone. That's when Karen made a show of spinning around, pointing to the canopy and declaring it illegal. Then, in what I can only describe as a strange mix of righteous rage and pure clumsiness, she stepped back onto the slippery pool deck and fell in. I dropped the lemonade I was holding. The kids screamed. Karen hit the water hard and sank like a rock. Her screams came a moment later. I ran outside, saw the chaos, and sprinted straight for the pool. I didn't think. I just jumped. But even after pulling her out, after making sure she was breathing and okay, she didn't thank me. She blamed me. "You built that canopy to lure me," she gasped. "This was all a trap." Amanda's jaw dropped. "What? You came into our yard." Karen sat up slowly, soaked and furious, coughing hard. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer. This isn't over." And that's when everything changed. Because 2 days later, we were served with papers. Karen was suing us for negligence, reckless endangerment, and most absurd of all, emotional distress. I thought it was a joke. Amanda didn't. She just stood there, the envelope in her hand, staring at the name of the law firm on the corner. "Jason," she said slowly, "they're actually serious." And that's how a backyard dip turned into a full-blown legal war. But what Karen didn't know, what she never even considered, was that not everything in our home was exactly as it seemed. Because we had proof. We just hadn't used it yet. And the moment we did, this whole game was going to flip on its head. But not yet. Not just yet. Let her play her cards first. The moment the lawsuit hit, everything around us changed. I mean everything. It wasn't just some angry neighbor wagging her finger anymore. This was full-blown warfare, in court-ordered font, with the threat of real consequences looming over our heads. Amanda spent that entire night pacing in the kitchen, her fingers tracing the edge of the marble counter over and over while the envelope sat on the table like a bomb. I read through the whole thing twice, each time slower, trying to wrap my head around the insanity. Karen had written a full statement, and I could barely believe what I was reading. She claimed she had come over to mediate a neighborhood dispute peacefully when I violently threatened her, causing her to panic and stumble into an unsafe pool area with 0 warning signs. According to her, I didn't jump in to save her. I waited, deliberately. Amanda, she said, verbally assaulted her as she drowned. And just like that, Karen had flipped the whole story upside down. "Jason," Amanda whispered around 2 a.m., "what if we lose? What if a judge actually believes this insanity?" I looked up at her, and I could see she wasn't afraid of the money. It was the principle, the betrayal, the sheer lunacy of it. We'd done everything right. We'd been kind. We tried to coexist. We bent over backwards to follow rules that didn't even make sense. And still, this woman was trying to destroy us. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Amanda. The next morning, I got up early and went into the garage. Tucked behind some old camping gear and a pile of moving boxes was the little security cabinet I'd installed when we moved in. Just a basic camera system. The one thing Karen had never asked about. She'd snapped pictures of our lawn, our mailbox, our lights, even Amanda's flower beds. But not once had she noticed the camera tucked into the corner of the roof, just above the sliding door that faced the pool. I powered up the old monitor and scrolled back through the previous week. I held my breath as I watched her march into our yard, uninvited, on at least 3 different days. I found the exact moment she stepped onto the pool deck and slipped. No one touched her. No one pushed her. And right there, clear as day, was Amanda rushing toward her to help before I even made it out the door. I copied the footage onto a USB stick, and then I waited. But even with that evidence tucked in my pocket, the anxiety didn't go away. Because Karen wasn't just spreading lies through legal paperwork, she was poisoning the neighborhood too. That afternoon, Amanda and I went out for a walk. We passed by the little park on Elm Street where families usually gathered with their kids and dogs. Normally, we'd stop and chat with some of the neighbors. But this time, something was off. People looked up as we approached, then quickly turned away. One woman with a golden retriever crossed the path to avoid us. Amanda caught my hand and squeezed it hard. "They've heard," she said quietly. By the next morning, we knew she was right. A post appeared on the neighborhood message board, anonymous, but obviously her. Let's be careful who we welcome. Some people pretend to be friendly, but underneath it all, they're dangerous. Ask yourself, would you want a neighbor who lets a woman nearly drown in their pool, just saying? It was like a spark in dry grass. Replies poured in. Some defended us. Others demanded answers. But the worst part was not knowing who believed what. Amanda stopped going for walks. I stopped answering the door. The low point hit 3 days later when my boss called. "Hey, Jason," he said, in that awkward tone you only hear when someone's trying not to make things worse. "Is everything okay at home?" I paused. "Why?" "There's been chatter. Online stuff. I know it's probably just a neighborhood spat, but someone linked a video." "What video?" "There's this grainy phone recording. It's not clear, but it shows a woman getting pulled out of your pool. It's all over that local Facebook group, man. She's saying you planned it. And, well, you know how this looks." My jaw clenched. I saved her. She fell in after trespassing. "I believe you," he said quickly. "But HR's asking questions. Just keep your head down for now, all right?" And just like that, Karen's campaign reached my job. Amanda and I sat down that night, the TV playing some reality show in the background neither of us was watching. "She's trying to destroy our lives," Amanda said softly. "But why?" I didn't have an answer, but I knew we couldn't just sit back anymore. We decided to hire a lawyer, a young guy named Luke McKinley who had handled HOA disputes before. His office smelled like instant coffee and lemon disinfectant. He wore scuffed shoes and had a nervous energy, but he was sharp. We showed him the papers, then the USB. As the video played, he leaned back slowly. "Well," he said after a beat, "she's done." "You think we can win?" Amanda asked. Luke smiled. "You're not just going to win. You're going to own her story by the end of this." But before we could even prepare a response filing, things escalated again. It was the following Thursday. Amanda had gone into town for groceries, and I stayed back to mow the lawn. It was the first normal thing I'd done in weeks. The sun was out, birds chirping, and I had music playing in my earbuds. I was halfway through the front yard when I saw flashing lights. 2 police cruisers. I took out my earbuds, confused. The officers stepped out and walked toward me slowly, hands on their belts. "You Jason Bennett?" one of them asked. "Yeah. What's this about?" "We received a report of domestic violence," the officer said. "A woman called 911 claiming you assaulted her at this address." My stomach dropped. What woman?" She identified herself as Karen Mitchell. "I haven't seen Karen since she tried to sue me." The other officer nodded. "Mind if we look around?" "You're welcome to," I said, already boiling inside. Amanda pulled into the driveway minutes later, bag still in her hands, completely stunned to see the cops combing through our yard. I explained what happened. The officers apologized, but said they had to respond to the report. It was a setup. Karen was trying to make us look violent, dangerous, unstable. Luke called it character stacking. She was trying to build a pattern of accusations. Even if they didn't stick, the idea was to flood us with so many problems that we'd just give up, move away, crumble. But she underestimated something. We weren't the kind of people who broke that easily. And now that the courts were involved, she was going to have to lie under oath. And that was going to be her undoing. But just as we started prepping for the first hearing, another letter showed up in our mailbox, one that made Amanda's hands tremble as she held it out to me. It wasn't from Karen. It was from the HOA board itself, and it said they were opening an investigation into us. The letterhead alone was enough to turn Amanda's face pale. Notice of pending disciplinary review, it read, stamped in all caps with a bold red line across the top. Below that was the familiar logo of our HOA, and beneath it, a formal accusation claiming we had created a hostile environment for the community, citing multiple neighbor complaints, safety violations, and failure to comply with HOA guidelines. Amanda stood frozen in the foyer. I could see her lips moving, but no sound was coming out. Hostile environment? I said, grabbing the letter from her hand. We're the ones being harassed. She didn't respond. She just sat down slowly on the stairs, eyes fixed on the floor. This wasn't just another annoying letter. This was different. If the board sided with Karen and voted to penalize us, it could mean fines, revoked privileges, even liens on our home, all for something we didn't do. But the worst part? The timing. Our first court hearing with Karen's lawsuit was only days away. This board investigation would run alongside it. 2 fronts, double pressure. And Karen knew that. Luke wasn't surprised when I told him. Karen's not just vindictive, he said, flipping through the HOA bylaws. She's strategic. If she can make the board doubt you, even a little, it gives her lawsuit more weight. 2 separate bodies saying the same thing? That's enough to make a judge pause. So what do we do? I asked. He looked up at me, calm but firm. We fight both, head on. That weekend, Luke helped us draft a formal response to the HOA board. We included a detailed breakdown of all the accusations, the dates Karen trespassed, copies of the cease and desist letter Luke had sent her 2 weeks ago, and, most importantly, the security footage. We hand-delivered it to the HOA office Monday morning. The receptionist took the envelope with a flat smile, already knowing what it was about. No words, no small talk. Just the kind of silence that tells you people have been talking, probably behind closed doors. That same afternoon, Amanda got a call from her sister, Lacey. "Hey," Lacey said carefully. "Someone posted a new thread in the neighborhood group. About you." Amanda went silent. "She said you've been spying on neighbors with hidden cameras, that Jason has a temper, that y'all are trying to intimidate people into silence." Amanda nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "Look, I don't believe a word of it," Lacey said quickly. "But you should see the comments. People are eating it up." Karen had taken it to a whole new level. She was trying to turn us into villains, not just in the HOA's eyes, but in the entire neighborhood. This wasn't about the pool anymore. This was about power, about control. Amanda didn't leave the house for the next 2 days. I did my best to keep things normal, cooked dinner, mowed the lawn, made jokes, but her smile never quite reached her eyes. This woman who used to laugh so hard she'd wheeze during movie nights now barely spoke. I hated Karen for that more than anything else, for the way she drained the joy out of the woman I loved. Tuesday evening, Luke called. "Karen's lawyer just sent over a new filing," he said. "She's demanding punitive damages now." I rubbed my temples. Of course she is. She's also trying to get a temporary restraining order. Says you've been following her around the neighborhood. That's insane. She included pictures. My stomach dropped. What kind of pictures? Luke sighed. Grainy shots. You walking down the street. You at the mailbox. It's all garbage. But again, it adds to the illusion. Karen was weaving a web, thread by thread, lie by lie. And unless we could punch through it with hard proof, we were going to get buried alive. Luke paused. I need something more. Something that doesn't just prove she's lying, but shows the board she's dangerous. I looked around the room. The silence in the house was suffocating. I might have something, I said slowly. There was a memory scratching at the back of my mind. 2 weeks ago, Ryan had come by to drop off a cooler we left at his place. As he pulled up, he mentioned seeing Karen crouched near our trash bins, fiddling with something. I'd brushed it off, thinking she was just snooping. But what if she planted something? That night, I went through every inch of the backyard. Amanda helped, flashlight in hand. We didn't find anything near the bins or fence, but just when we were about to give up, I spotted it. Something tucked behind a bush near the pool pump. A voice recorder, taped under a fake rock. Amanda gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She's spying on us." I grabbed it carefully and took it inside, hooked it up to my laptop. It was still running. The last few recordings were crackly, mostly background noise, but one file, marked from 4 nights ago, sent chills down my spine. Karen's voice, clear as day. And once I get the board to open the investigation, the rest will crumble. She'll break down. He'll lose his job. Then they'll sell, and I'll be rid of them. Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. "She's planning this," she said. She admitted it. And that was it. That was the proof. We had her. Luke was stunned when I sent it to him. "This changes everything," he said. "We'll submit it to the court tomorrow morning and include it in the HOA appeal. This woman just nuked her own case." Amanda finally smiled that night. Really smiled. We stood out on the deck, under the soft glow of the patio lights, arms around each other as crickets hummed and the wind stirred the trees. It felt like peace for the first time in weeks, until we heard the crash. Glass shattered. A brick rolled across the patio and landed at Amanda's feet, wrapped in a sheet of paper. She picked it up with trembling hands. 4 words were scrawled in thick black marker. "Back off or else." The paper shook in Amanda's hand as she stared at the words. I snatched the note and read it again, my heart pounding hard in my chest. Back off or else. The brick had smashed one of the side windows, right near our kitchen. Glass was everywhere. Amanda's eyes darted to the gate, wide open. I grabbed my phone and called 911. The police arrived within 10 minutes, flashlights sweeping through the yard. One officer asked if we had security footage. I led him inside and rewound the camera feed to just minutes before the crash. There she was. Karen. She had come creeping through the alley in a black hoodie, face partly hidden, brick in hand. She paused at the gate, then slipped in like a shadow. She didn't hesitate. She hurled the brick at the kitchen window, then turned and vanished into the dark. We showed the footage to the officer. He gave a slow whistle. "You know this woman?" "She's suing us," I said. "She's the HOA Vice President." His brows went up. "Well, she just turned a civil case into a criminal one." The officer filed a report and said they'd send it to the district attorney. We gave them a copy of the footage. As the patrol car pulled away, Amanda sat on the bottom step inside, her knees pulled up to her chest. "She's not just trying to ruin us," she whispered. "She's unhinged." We slept with the lights on that night. The next morning, we handed everything over to Luke. Security footage, the recorder, the brick, the threatening note. He smiled grimly. "She made a mistake," he said. "People like her always do. She's been operating with the belief that no one can touch her, that her title, her connections, her control over the board, it's all armor." He leaned forward. "But now we've got a different game. This isn't just about defamation or trespassing anymore. This is criminal intimidation. It's going to blow up in her face. But we still had to go to court. The hearing for Karen's lawsuit was scheduled for Friday. Amanda and I sat in that courtroom, palms sweaty, heartbeats like thunder. Karen was already there when we arrived, sitting smugly at the plaintiff's table in a gray suit, her hair tightly pinned, her expression calm and confident, like she'd already won. She didn't know what we had. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Then it began. Karen's lawyer launched into a dramatic retelling of the incident, painting her as a kind-hearted HOA volunteer who was just trying to help restore order in a neighborhood plagued by a disruptive new resident. He claimed I threatened her, Amanda screamed at her, and that we allowed her to fall into a pool we failed to secure. I watched Karen nod along, the image of the perfect victim. Then it was Luke's turn. He started slow, calm, professional. Then he dropped the audio recording. Karen's voice filled the courtroom, her own words, her plan, her gloating. The shift in the room was instant. Karen's eyes darted, her mouth fell open slightly. Then Luke played the footage, the moment she slipped into the yard, trespassed, and fell in on her own. And finally, the video of her throwing the brick. The judge's eyebrows lifted higher with each new piece of evidence. By the time Luke sat down, the entire mood of the room had flipped. Karen's lawyer scrambled to request a recess. The judge leaned forward. "We'll resume this afternoon, but let me be clear. This court does not take kindly to manipulation or abuse of the legal system. If what I've seen holds up, this case may take a very different turn." Karen stood slowly, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. Amanda and I walked past her without a word. But as we stepped outside the courtroom doors, she turned toward me. "This isn't over," she hissed. I didn't respond, because it wasn't over. We still had to face the HOA board. That meeting was scheduled for Sunday. When we arrived at the community clubhouse, the parking lot was packed. Apparently, word had spread about the court hearing. People were curious now, some looking at us with sympathy, others with lingering doubt. We stepped into the main room. The board sat at a long table up front, papers and files stacked in front of them. Karen's seat was empty, but she hovered in the back like a ghost. The board president, a balding man named Martin Hughes, banged a small gavel and called the meeting to order. The purpose of this session is to address misconduct complaints filed by HOA member Karen Mitchell against homeowners Jason and Amanda Bennett. However, he said, flipping a paper over, given recent developments and new evidence presented in court, we are reopening the scope of this investigation. The projector clicked on. Luke, standing beside us, nodded to the AV technician. The footage played again. Karen trespassing, falling, throwing the brick. Her voice on the recorder. The room was dead silent. Then someone in the crowd whispered, "She set the whole thing up." Martin looked visibly shaken. "Ms. Mitchell," he said slowly, turning toward the back of the room. "Do you have anything to say?" Karen stepped forward. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally spoke, her voice thin. "This is a personal attack. They're twisting my words. This is all retaliation." Martin sighed. "We'll deliberate in private." They left the room for 15 minutes. When they came back, Martin stood. "In light of this evidence," he said carefully, "the board hereby dismisses all complaints against the Bennetts. Furthermore, we are suspending Ms. Mitchell from the board, pending a full review, effective immediately." Karen gasped. "You can't do this. I built this HOA." Martin didn't flinch. "And now you've tarnished it." She stormed out, muttering under her breath. People around us began to clap, just a few at first, then more. Amanda gripped my hand tightly. We thought the nightmare was finally over. But that night, another letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single page, typed, cold. It read, "You won't always have cameras watching. Some things happen in the dark." I read the letter twice before handing it to Amanda. Her fingers tightened on the edges as she scanned the typed words, her lips parting slightly in fear. "You won't always have cameras watching. Some things happen in the dark." She looked up at me. "Jason, she's not done." "No," I said, swallowing hard. "She's just getting started." We reported the letter to the police first thing the next morning, and they opened a formal investigation into criminal harassment. But the detective warned us, unless she's caught in the act again, this could just be seen as an anonymous threat. Be careful. Be alert. Amanda and I started moving through our own house like strangers in a museum. We kept the blinds closed. We double-locked every door. We stopped using the pool. Even the dog started barking at shadows. What used to be our sanctuary now felt like a fortress under siege. Karen had lost the lawsuit. She'd been suspended from the HOA board. She had been publicly exposed and humiliated. But none of it stopped her. In fact, it only seemed to fuel her. It was as if her entire identity had been shattered, and now she was on a mission to get revenge, any way she could. Amanda suggested we stay with her sister for a few nights. I refused, not because I wasn't scared, but because I didn't want Karen to think she'd driven us out. Still, when the power went out at 3:12 a.m. the next night, I nearly changed my mind. I shot out of bed, heart thudding. Amanda sat up beside me, clutching the sheets. "Did you pay the bill?" she asked in a whisper. "Yes," I said, already on my feet. I moved to the window. The streetlights were on. The neighbors' porch lights, too. It wasn't a neighborhood outage. Only our house was dark. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the circuit box outside. The lock was broken. Clean, snapped. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Every switch had been flipped off, manually. I flipped them back and rushed inside. Lights blinked on. The fridge hummed again. Amanda was standing by the front door, her phone to her ear. "Yes, officer. Our power was cut. Someone's outside our house." She listened for a moment. "Okay, please hurry." I grabbed the bat I kept by the bed. I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted to protect the life we'd worked so hard to build. The police came 15 minutes later. They swept the yard, looked for prints, asked the usual questions, but just like before, no witnesses, no cameras pointing at the fuse box, and no Karen in sight. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat by the living room window with the bat across my lap, watching the shadows crawl across the lawn. The next morning, Amanda made coffee, her hands shaking. She looked up at me and said something I'll never forget. "I feel like I'm drowning in my own home." That hit me harder than any brick, any lawsuit, any threat, because she meant it. And I had no way to fix it, until something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang. It was Martin Hughes, the HOA president. He stood there awkwardly, a folder in his hands, shifting on his feet. "I thought you might want to see this," he said. Inside the folder were copies of formal complaints from other residents. Not about us, about Karen. Turns out, since her suspension, people had started coming forward. Stories poured in. She'd threatened fines that didn't exist, issued fake violations, harassed a teenage girl over her bike being parked too far from the garage. Someone even claimed she let her dog poop in their yard, then left a citation for them the next day. Martin closed the folder. "We let her get away with too much for too long," he admitted. "We didn't see the damage she was doing, and I'm sorry." I stared at the folder, overwhelmed. "Why now?" I asked. He looked at me. "Because you fought back, and you did it the right way." He handed me a formal letter from the board, a full HOA exoneration, a written apology, and a revocation of Karen's HOA privileges for 5 years. It felt like a small gust of air after being buried under rubble. Amanda cried when she read it, happy tears this time. She even went out on the deck that evening. We grilled burgers again, just the two of us, played a little music, let ourselves breathe. But peace didn't last long. 2 nights later, I was locking the back gate when I noticed the pool. Something was floating in it. I stepped closer, squinting through the moonlight. It was a red high heel, just one, floating like a blood-red cork near the deep end. My stomach twisted. I grabbed the net and fished it out. The moment I touched it, a voice echoed from the shadows. "You always were good at saving people." I spun around. Karen stepped out from behind the trees, barefoot, wild-eyed, her arms folded tight across her chest. "I thought you were gone," I said slowly. She smiled. "I don't disappear," she said. "I wait, and now it's your turn to fall in." For a split second, I couldn't move. The sound of her voice, too calm, too cold, hung in the air like fog. Karen stood under the trees, moonlight brushing across her face. Her hair was undone, wild, her bare feet sunk into the grass like she'd been standing there a while. But it was her eyes that hit me hardest, wide, unblinking, locked onto mine like she'd been rehearsing this moment in her mind for weeks. "You think this is over?" she whispered. I tightened my grip on the pool net still dripping from the heel I'd pulled out. "You're trespassing," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Again." She stepped closer, slowly, her head tilted just slightly. "You ruined me," she said, almost like it was a confession. "You humiliated me in front of my neighbors, the board, the judge. My name used to mean something here. Now I'm just the woman who fell in your pool." I kept my body between her and the house. Amanda was inside. If Karen had come with a plan, I wasn't about to let her anywhere near my wife. "I didn't ruin you," I said. "You did that yourself." Her face twitched. "You always thought you were better than everyone," she muttered. "Moving in here with your perfect wife, your fancy outdoor lights, laughing with the neighbors like you belonged." She pulled something from her coat pocket. My heart stopped. It was a kitchen knife. One of ours. I'd know that black handle anywhere. The missing one from the drawer Amanda noticed last week. We'd brushed it off, figured we misplaced it during a cookout, but no. Karen had been inside our house. I held up my hands. "Karen, listen to me. Put that down." She smiled like it was a game. "You know what I realized, Jason? It was never about the rules. Not really. It was about control. I had it. Then you took it from me. And now—" She raised the knife slightly. "I'm taking it back." Behind her, the motion sensor lights clicked on. She flinched. That was all I needed. I rushed her. The net slammed into her arm, and the knife went flying, skittering across the patio and into the bushes. She screamed, lunged for it, but I tackled her to the ground. We rolled, limbs thrashing, her nails scraping at my face. The gate burst open. Amanda. She'd seen it all from the window and called the cops before running outside with the old baseball bat we kept by the bed. Karen scrambled to her feet and lunged for Amanda. Amanda swung hard. The crack of wood hitting bone echoed across the yard. Karen dropped like a rag doll, moaning, clutching her shoulder. Then, sirens. Red and blue lights spun through the trees. Officers jumped the fence and swarmed the yard, guns drawn. Commands shouted. Karen was cuffed on the wet grass, screaming about setups and conspiracies, about how we lured her, how we brainwashed the whole neighborhood. But no one believed her anymore. This time, there were no doubts. She was arrested on the spot. Multiple charges: trespassing, assault with a deadly weapon, breaking and entering, harassment, criminal threats. They found more in her car: a journal filled with violent ramblings, a printed map of our home's floor plan, even photos of Amanda at the grocery store, taken from afar. It wasn't just obsession. It was premeditated. The next weeks moved in a blur. Karen was denied bail. A judge called her a danger to herself and the community. She was ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation. The neighborhood, once divided, came together in a way we'd never seen before. Neighbors left flowers on our doorstep. Others dropped by with food, handwritten notes, or quiet hugs. Martin personally delivered a new HOA charter, one that included new oversight, term limits, and community vote requirements. No one will ever have that kind of power again, he promised. And us? We stayed, because leaving would have meant she won. Amanda planted new flowers along the fence. I fixed the window. We got a better security system, yes, but we also reclaimed our home. The final piece came in the mail 3 months later. A court order. Karen Mitchell had been found mentally unfit to stand trial, committed to a long-term psychiatric facility under state supervision. No release unless cleared by multiple medical boards. Her rights as a homeowner were revoked. The HOA removed her from all records. Her house was sold within weeks. She was erased, but the damage she caused wasn't. Amanda still flinches at loud knocks. I still wake up sometimes to check the yard. But we breathe easier now. We live again. We laugh again. Because after everything she tried to take from us, we still had each other. That pool, the one where it all started, it's still there, still blue, still peaceful. And some nights, when the moon hits it just right, I stand at the edge and stare into the water, remembering the chaos, the madness, and the way it almost swallowed us whole, but didn't.